just looking at streets and sidewalks and things that need to be repaired, that kind of thing, and then it also ties in with safety as well, so just to make things more appealing visually, I guess if you wanted to
There's
just,
probably something operating budget.
yes, that's what
He's
I'm
gonna try
thinking.
to clean things up today.
Uh-huh,
Beautification could be baskets of flowers, too much maintenance,
uh-huh,
extra. That's good. Just have in your mind
yeah,
a little sketch of what it is.
uh-huh, yeah, yeah,
I'm all for that too. But there's some few things in here that are in their operating budget.
uh-huh,
But over the years, they
Yeah.
got put in this budget
Oh, I
because they
see.
were like pet projects. But they really belong over
in the operating, okay,
And that's been the hardest thing for me to learn about budgeting. And that definition,
yeah,
of 10 years and all that. He's
Right.
gonna try to clean that up
okay,
because it's very confusing.
I appreciate that, yeah, yeah.
Oh God, I'm gonna need really good glasses.
I know, this
This
is
is
tough,
the big version.
exactly. Hi, Jeff.
Alrighty, it's 4:30 on April 5th. We are at the Carmel-by-the-Sea City Council. Can we get a roll call, please, Nova?
Councilmember Barron,
Here.
Councilmember Drammel,
Here.
Councilmember Ferlito,
Yes, I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Richards,
Here.
Mayor Potter.
Yeah.
All are present.
All right, let's go into business, and we have public appearance, an opportunity for any member of the public to comment on an item that is not on tonight's agenda. Anybody wishing to do so, now is the time. I don't see anybody in the room here. Is anybody in Zoom world?
I don't see any hands raised.
All righty. Well, we can go ahead. Chip, would you like to kind of set the stage for today's action?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council. This is to receive the presentation on the proposed fiscal year 23-24 capital improvement program and 5-year capital improvement program, provide direction to staff. This is kind of the annual, when I annually start talking about the budget, and in past years I've been a little more Pollyanna-ish than I will be this year, and it's because I'm concerned about our local economy and the impacts on our revenue stream. So I took some notes, and I wanted to just kind of try to set the stage, not to be too dour or dire, but just to maybe help influence the next item that you'll be reviewing. I know that several of you have met with both Maxine and Mr. Harari and myself about the capital improvement budget, and we'll get into that, and I'm looking forward to a healthy discussion. But if you look at what's happening recently, the Federal Reserve is very aggressive pace at interest rate hikes, which obviously are tied to the rate of inflation. We're hitting levels not seen in over 40 years. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, which threatens Europe's energy supply and can wreak havoc on energy commodity prices internationally. Obviously, the price of fuel here in California, significant declines in the U.S. personal savings rate, which has collapsed following the end of federal stimulus programs associated with the pandemic. Concurrent declines in both the housing market and the auto industry, an increase in credit delinquency rates, which often precede and or accompany a recession in the United States, credit card debt soaring over 19% last quarter. And then, when we talk about what's happening locally, one of our pillars, of course, is our transit occupancy tax. We had a very conservative period for November and December, where occupancy was at about 57%, which was almost 10 basis points less than last year during the height of during the pandemic, certainly. And this, of course, is adjusted for the number of hotel rooms that we have out of service that are being constructed right now, which is about 100. So I've got about 1,000 hotel rooms, so 100 out of place. That's been adjusted. The rack rate is up, but theoretically there is a cap on how much we can charge for some of our hotel rooms in the village. So I'm you'll be presented in May with a conservative budget. And although we've got pretty healthy fund balance and of course our reserves, I think that we would be well intended to again very conservatively look at the next fiscal year. And of course, some of the options that Bob will be presenting to you in a few minutes, since we're carrying over 2 fiscal years worth of capital work, is maybe keeping our powder a little bit dry and only doing the ultimately necessary capital work that we need to do this coming fiscal year. Those would be capital projects associated with other funding streams, such as Senate Bill 1 and Measure X for pavement. So happy to answer any questions. Again, I don't want to be too dour, but I do want to start the discussion in our budget with the economic indicators. I'm not overly optimistic about our revenue streams this coming year, and it won't be long until our expenditures outstrip our revenues unless we come up with a new revenue source or further tighten our belts. Part of that is a result of the new positions that we added to the budget last year, and again, a lot of other prices for things like our unfunded actuarial liability, our insurances, and other items that have gone up. So that's what I have, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'm sorry for being a little bit of a downer, but those are my opening comments, sir.
Appreciate that. Chip, are there any questions of Chip before we open it up?
No, I just have a comment. I think as dour as that was, Mr. Chip, we have to remember that we are investing in our community. And anything that we do that we are investing in our community is not waste. It's, I saw this thing today, it says community safety is about investing in the health of the whole community. Affordable housing, green spaces, living wages, access to healthy food. When we invest in our community, we invest in a future that is healthy and safe for all of us. So I always like to start these budget meetings, which tend to also have that fiscal conservation in it. Everything that's on here is an investment in our community.
Yes, ma'am. I certainly agree with you.
Yeah, I think so too. I just would say that it's just as you invest the public dollar, it'd be like if you're investing with your own dollars, you do so consciously.
Yep.
So not frivolously.
Health and safety.
Yeah.
Bob?
All right, Bob.
Oh, Max has
sorry.
Sorry.
Max with the intro.
Well, I think Chip took my whole presentation, so I'm going
you
to.
guys say that every year. You guys say that.
No, and hopefully not. So let me just start off, good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and go over a very just high level of our budget summary and 5-year projections. And this was a couple weeks ago, and this is a very fluid document because I would say every day we are getting updates to our numbers, and we just finalized our numbers on Friday, so you will actually get an updated sheet at the next meeting. But this is a very fluid document overall that just kind of gives our general sense 5-year projections for our organization. And as Chip indicated, in kind of our future years, you're starting to see a deficit, and that is just, again, overall based on the numbers that we have to date. So that is our 5-year projection.
And again, especially for Councilmember Dramoff, when we look at our pillars, our 3 revenue pillars, which are transit occupancy tax, sales tax, which is the traditional Bradley-Burns, as well as Measure C, and real property taxes, we do factor in increases, obviously, but it's not every day, for example, that we get $22 million properties sold. So again, if you look at property taxes, you could pretty much map it. It's kind of like almost like an energy stock. It goes up by 2 or 3 or 4% per year. You're not getting, massive 10% increases in any of these revenue streams, let alone real property. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to start off the conversation just from a funding standpoint as you start to discuss CIP with Bob. So we do have 2 years of carryovers, and one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we highlight is that last year when we went through the same process and we presented to council, we also had the same discussion about carrying over our projects. However, the funding piece of it was not adopted in our budget. The money did not go away. The money was rolled back up into our general fund. However, from an administrative standpoint, we do have to allocate those dollars officially, meaning through the adopted budget. So it was important for me to make sure that we highlighted that to council. So that way you see we're already starting when the budget for CIP is already starting at $6.6 million. That is because without any new projects, that's because we're rolling over the 8 projects from 21, 22, and we're carrying over 17 projects that Bob's going to talk about from this year, 22, 23. So I just wanted to clarify that if there was any reason like why does the CIP number look so large? That is because we do have to authorize, it's basically 2 years that we're authorizing those rollovers. So that's the starting point. And then any additional discussion of CIPs for this upcoming fiscal year, again, will be put into our financial projections that we will be bringing to council.
And you know, Bob will highlight some projects that we have accomplished in spite of the fact that we didn't have a project manager. And then hopefully next month or Nova, or maybe in June at the latest, we can introduce you to our new staff members, including Javier, who is a professional engineer. And he started 3 weeks ago. So, and he's the one who wrote you the kind of the introductory white paper on undergrounding recently. Bob transmitted it, but it came from Javier. So again, our expectation is now that we have a project manager that next year we won't be required to carry over quite as many projects. We'll get more implemented.
Correct. So with that, I will let Bob start talking about the CIP.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Let's see if we can get this thing to work. And we do. Okay, so first I wanted to review the definition of the CIP projects as well as the sources of where these projects are coming from. Review the 14 projects that we did complete this fiscal year or that we anticipate completing by June 30th this year. We have a few projects that we're recommending to cancel or defer, and some potential projects to be funded or donated by others. We're going to review the 25 carryover projects from last year and the current year. Now this, in prior years, through this process, we usually talk about the carryover projects twice, but because of the storms canceled our last 2 special meetings, this is hopefully going to be a one and done. So I'll spend a little bit more time to focus on the carryover projects so there's a good understanding from council what these projects are all about, and maybe not have to revisit it except for when it comes time to adopt the budget. Then we have a review, an initial list of 17, it's actually up to 18 capital projects for this upcoming fiscal year. Just really briefly touch base on that carryover funding issue. Then I'm gonna launch into the full CIP overview with the 5-year CIP, just to kind of get a sense of, are we distributing our funds in the right percentages to the various infrastructure categories, as well as the deficit that we're going to be facing without some additional funding sources. And then talking about some CIP implementation strategies. One huge one is to have Javier Hernandez on board to help us with the backlog. Capital improvement project definition, what we've been using for years is a project that's over $10,000 and exceeds 10 years. A typical capital project is a pavement project, drainage repair, building renovation. Those are capital projects. We are also using, when there's a report that identifies future capital projects. So for example, we just got a facility condition assessment report from one of our consultants that identifies for several buildings dozens of future projects for more than 10 years. That's a capital project. Some of the other projects are more maintenance, ongoing maintenance things that we're gonna seek a council direction, but we're gonna be suggesting that we put ongoing maintenance projects that in the past were considered capital projects, let's put them in the operating budget where they belong. An example would be the North Dune Habitat Restoration Area. We have ongoing monitoring. It's gonna be that way for years. Years ago, we did some extra work that was a capital project. Ongoing maintenance or ongoing monitoring doesn't belong as a capital project. It really belongs in the operating budget. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Okay, so where are all these projects coming from? We have it's also listed in the council packet, ADA transition plan, various city departments weigh in. We have the adopted climate action and adaptation plans. Council strategic priorities list was reviewed. Facility condition assessments back in 2013 and the new ones we got this year. Mission Trail, Nature Preserve, and North Dunes master plans, the stream stability study, outside entities, for example, the Sunset Center, the Street Saver pavement management program, and our vehicle replacement schedule. Okay, here's our completed projects this fiscal year. I won't go over everyone, but highlight a few. We had our annual ADA upgrade project. We believe that we should continue with our ADA upgrades each year to show good faith efforts that we're doing something. Community planning and building purchased some electric vehicles that are outside. Those are the facility condition assessments that we just got the report that identify numerous future projects. We're not proposing to start those projects yet next fiscal year, but we will be back. The fire engine was purchased. Now, it's a 2-year delivery, so we don't have it yet. We purchased it. We suggest that we take it off the list. There's not much we can do from a capital project programming perspective. Now we just wait for it to arrive. A little bit different than the ambulance that I'll get to in a moment. Library master plan is well underway. Mission Trail, I am reading everyone, aren't I? And sorry. Mission Trail, the 3 drainage improvements, we broke this up into 2 years. This year, actually last year, was the design environmental permits of the drainage improvements. All we got to do is get the Army Corps and the Fish and Wildlife Service permit, and we're ready to go out to bid. So in a couple of months, we'll go out to bid on that. North Dunes habitat restoration, just a typical year. The radios lease year 2 of 6. As you'll notice, if you walk into the planning office, you see that there's a lot of filing cabinets been removed. That's because they completed their public access property records, digitizing all the numerous years of records. The scenic pathway barrier rails, this is something that Dale Byrne from Carmel Cares mentioned last night. It has been a long process. We do have approved plans. We'll be going to council at the May meeting to award a purchase order for a vendor to provide all the lumber and things, and Carmel Cares will install it. Our stormwater ordinance, it's not a capital project also, but it was mentioned at the last year's CIP. It's been updated, it's been reviewed by Water Quality Control Board, it's been reviewed by the Coastal Commission. Barring any final comments from the Coastal Commission, that'll be before you in the upcoming council meeting or 2. Street sweeper is purchased, it's being manufactured overseas. We anticipate getting that right before July 1st. Sunset Center HVAC controller, that was added on to last year's CIP. It was completed last year, and the UPS system was recently completed up at the police station, getting all the electrical work done. Okay. Oh, so let me go back. Okay, so this is I don't intend to present these capital projects. They're completed. At the end of this meeting, we're suggesting that you accept that as a done deal, and we move on and focus on other upcoming projects in the next couple of rounds of the CIP. The first 3 are projects to cancel or defer. The first one was from the CRA, was proposing to install a split rail zigzag fence on the Ocean Avenue medians. That application has been withdrawn, so that project should be canceled. It was in the CIP. Vista Lobos interior remodel, this is in the current year CIP. The $25,000 was just seed money to get it started, looking at design, looking at space for staffing. We suggest that not to cancel it, let's defer it. We don't need it right now. Both planning and public works have a little bit more breathing room space than we had a year ago. And we need to decide what to do with the police station. We might use Vista Lobos as swing space for the renovation of the police station. Let's recommend that we just defer that for now. Come back to it at a future date. And Councilman Richards will be happy to, this one, wayfinding signs, recommending that we cancel that. This was funding from TAMC. In a nutshell, what they envisioned and what we envisioned are completely different. And we do not support what they envisioned, and they don't support what we envisioned. It's small dollars. We would go way over budget if we do either what we envisioned or they envisioned. So just to cancel it. We don't need that project right now. A couple of projects that are anticipated by others. Carmel Cares. Mr. Byrd talked about the Forest Theater picnic tables. We do have to go back to the Forest and Beach Commission for approval, but that project is getting close to fruition. We're hope to do a different design approach for the Ocean Avenue median landscaping. And post office parking lot landscaping, they've already got quite a bit done just recently, so that's an ongoing project. This next project was in the current year budget. CIP, were the prior environmental compliance manager made some contacts with some potential volunteers for the interpretive signage and split rail fencing. Didn't really come to fruition yet. We were hopeful that that could still happen. So let's just, let's just keep that going. Scout House renovation was discussed last night, and I will say no more on that one because I used up my 29 minutes on that one last night. Okay, now we're going to drill down on carryover projects. Here's the first 15. Okay, the ambulance and equipment. We'll be going to council the next couple of months to award a contract. It's tentatively about a little over $400,000. We had two projects that we bundled together. It was an ambulance, which we had $250,000 from the CIP plus 220. I'm mixing it up. We had 50,000 external funds, 200,000 from the city funds, and then this current year we added equipment for 75,000. Bundle all the money together, carry that forward for 3 more fiscal years. When the ambulance arrives, we might have to put in another $80-something thousand in fiscal year 25, 26, when the ambulance arrives and the bill comes due. So that will be a carryover for many years. But we'll be before you soon to get that thing awarded and get the thing manufactured. Beautification project is a strategic priority. We didn't necessarily code our invoices correctly, but we did buy 60 trees. We planted about 40 of them so far before the storms came. I hope to get the rest of them in the ground before the end of the fiscal year. Next project is the City Hall retaining wall repair project. The balance of that $100,000 will roll over with the the $113,600 that was approved as a supplemental amount to award that construction project that's about to get started. The next one, it's 2 projects that were lumped together. It's the beach sand survey and the coastal engineering study. This is also a strategic priority as it kind of is a spin-off from the climate committee and the climate adaptation plan. Project is underway. Let's see what I want to say about that. Oh, and then the first task of that talked about problems we have on the shoreline, beach access stairs, the revetments, the seawalls. I'll talk about that in an upcoming slide, but we need to get started. I believe we need to get started on designing those repairs. The next project is design of storm drainage improvements, phases 1 and 2. This year we did complete the update to the citywide storm drain master plan. We evaluated the plan for a 20-year storm event because of increased, climate change and stronger storms versus a 10-year. It did have a little bit of an impact on upsizing some pipes and requiring more retention. We have a long ways to go. We're not suggesting that we add any money for that project for next fiscal year because let's get caught up. Let's use next year as a catch-up to get caught up on those designs. Electrical panel upgrades, you'll be seeing a professional services agreement with an electrical engineering firm to drill down and look at those electrical panels at City Hall, Sunset Center, Vista Lobos, and it was going to be Public Works. We're switching that to the fire station because Public Works kind of was integrated with the police station. And we are at 90% design on a 6 facility renovation projects bundled together. It's the City Hall roof replacement, main library carpeting, generator, and exterior and interior painting. It's the Sunset Center cottage window repairs, and hazardous material abatement and exterior painting at Sunset Center. So that's a big job. We're at roughly 90%. Should be going out to bid this summer. Just some pictures of carryover projects. There's our ambulance on the upper left. The City Hall retaining wall, we talked about that last night. I wanted to point out that this is an example for the retaining wall where the initial budget was $100,000. We thought that was a good number based on what we knew at the time. When we got into the design, lo and behold, it's a much bigger project than what we had thought. It's not just fixing that retaining wall. I'm sorry, not just fixing the planter wall. It's to build a retaining wall under the building itself. In addition, the bids are coming in higher. We have, based on, after COVID, contractors have lost staff, contractors are busy, there's been a lot of inflation, cost of materials are up, cost of fuel is up. So our prices on the projects that we estimated a year or 2 or 3 years ago, they're going to be higher. So when we come to the new projects, I'm recommending a contingency, a CIP contingency, to cover when projects can come in over budget, the City Hall being an example. On the right, these are the drainage system repairs that are bubbled up in red. Those are the ones we're going to be focused on first. The big costly ones are along Junipero from, I think it's 5th down to 10th. That will be the big project that's first up. Continuing on with carryover projects. Number 16 is the concrete street repairs. We're at 30% design. This was also, we had $400,000 from external funds. If you saw in the Friday letter a couple weeks ago, we had the contractor core drill through the street. Kind of take a look at what's there today. So we're in design, that's going well. The next one is the paving project. That was several years old. As council will directed staff to remove the meeting islands along San Carlos last month. We're doing a little bit of musical chairs because of that Junipero storm and drain project. So we have a little bit more homework to do on that project before we go out to bid. The next project is more of the drainage projects that we need to design. Oh, I'm sorry, this is different. This is the Mission Trail 3 drainage projects. As soon as we get those permits, we'll go out to bid. Could be in a month or two. And then we need to construct that to capture that per capita grant fund for construction by the end of this end of the calendar year. That project is, it's going to be nip and tuck, but I think we're going to pull that off. The police building, it's 2 projects. We had the prior original project for $2 million. Council added $1.3 million this fiscal year. Bundle the money together, that's $3.3 million. It's a strategic priority, obviously. And so that is still on the books. We're negotiating, we tentatively selected an architectural firm. I'd rather not mention the name at this point. We just had a long discussion this afternoon with the architect to try to fine tune their proposal to match what it is that the council had in mind. So we're working on that. Hope to get to before council at the May meeting with a contract. The Resilience Infrastructure Planning Project really ties in with the police station. We put that on hold depending on what's going on with the police station. Urban Forest Master Plan is a strategic priority. We just completed the inventory of over 9,000 city trees. The inventory is done. It's all entered into our database. We will be asking for additional funding for that project, I think $29,000. So that could be project number 18 in the list of CIP projects. Mission Trail water well tank and pump house removal, the design is done. We're hoping to go out to bid by the end of April, so that's moving along. When we have all the environmental permits we need for that one, so that one's good to go. The wildfire risk assessment is a project that's also a strategic priority. That's well underway, being led by the fire department. Okay. Here's a couple of photos. San Carlos and Fifth. We remember that picture. It needs a lot of work. Police building, you all know, and there's the tank at Mission Trail that needs to be removed. So we're making progress on all the carryover projects. I spent a little bit more time than normal. I don't want to have to come back again and revisit those carryover projects unless you have any questions. But let me finish and maybe we can come back to it if you wish. Let's go over the carryover funding that Maxine introduced. So we have 8 carryover projects from last fiscal year worth $3.067 million. it's the balance of that number. That's the total amount if we didn't spend a nickel on any of those projects. We have, so the finance is going to find out exactly what remains of that budget and carry over the balance, but it's going to be close to the $3 million. For this year, we're projecting $3.6 million for carryover projects for 17 projects. Total carryover is 25 projects worth $6.6 million. So on a typical year, that's a full slate. We do no new projects, that is a full slate. I do want to point out that of the red number, the $3.067 million, it didn't slow down projects. For example, the police building, we're still moving on. We're using the $1.3 million from the current year. We didn't necessarily need that $2 million. So it didn't really hurt. The paving project, we were working with community on eliminating the meeting on it. So we didn't have construction. So that really didn't hurt. So none of the projects were stopped because of this, but we do need to make the correction. What else? Oh, and then in June, we'll ask council to approve whatever the operating budget, the capital budget, and to carry over the $6.67 million with that, with the CIP. Okay, potential new projects. I mentioned one already, which was the Urban Forest Master Plan, some additional services. Okay, so of the remaining 17 projects, I'm going to point out that 3 that I would suggest that we move to the operating budget where they belong, but they're on here for council's direction. I'm also going to point out 6 of the 17 that staff is recommending as the higher priority. They're all priorities. They're all worthwhile projects. As you can see, I'll show you in a few minutes. We can't afford them all. So what do we really have to do? What should we focus on? That's my recommendation. So the first project is the ADA upgrades year 6. In the past, well, I think year 1 or 2 was about 10,000. We upped it to 15,000. We need to show to the Department of Justice that we're making good faith efforts to continue the program and to make financial adjustments as inflation happens. So we need to keep the projects going. I say that's a critical project and recommending that we just up it from 15,000 to 20,000 so get more done. Second project, the description's a little bit off, but last night council approved the list of streets. The dollars are all right, so it's like $1.1 million. We're gonna do 5 overlays, 20 slurry seal street segments, and 7 sidewalk repairs. And of course, we'll supplement that with bike markings, landscaping, ADA ramps, that type of thing. Beautification project, I recommend that we move that into the forestry division operating budget. We'll continue the project, but it's not really a true definition of a capital project.
So what you're saying there is this is new funding, and we would carry over whatever balance we had from one of your prior slides, so we'd have $50,000 for beautification efforts, correct?
That would be correct.
Thank you.
Okay, the CIP contingency fund, we're recommending $500,000. We know we're going to need all that because I predict we're going to go over budget on the Mission Trail Nature Preserve, the 3 drainage project, the tank removal, the concrete streets, the facility renovations. So that money is going to go. Now, there's an alternative. Don't have to appropriate anything up front. We can wait as the projects come in, maybe we get lucky with some bids, and lo and behold, we're great. They're going to, most of these are going to go over budget. If we have a fund, we can say award the contract and carry over some of the money from the contingency fund to pay for that. City of Monterey has been doing this method for many years. Other agencies that I personally have worked for uses this method. And so it's not something that's unique to, it would be unique to Carmel, but it's strongly recommended. Coastal engineering study phase 2 for $100,000. This is an important project. I'm not going to recommend it as critical yet because we still have almost a year's worth of work on the coastal engineering study phase 1. All ears. Council, direct staff what you want to do, but that's a recommendation. If we're going to catch up, that would be one of the projects we can catch our breath on the existing project that we have underway, and then go forward with that in the year. In the meantime, we are looking at grant opportunities for that $100,000. So maybe that would happen somewhere through the next fiscal year. IT service is a critical project, according to Joel. For $50,000, that would come out of the vehicle and equipment fund. Library master plan project number 1. If we look at the 5-year CIP, talking to Ashley and her talks with the library board, we think that the master plan is coming to an end. There's going to be a series of projects. If we start the design of the first project next fiscal year, we think that there'll be potentially quite a bit of donation funding for construction the following year. So next year we design project 1, whatever that is, it's unknown at this time. Year 2, we build it with a lot of donation money. Year 3, do another design. Year 4, build another with a lot of donation money. I'll leave it at that. Mission Trail Nature Preserve invasive removal, $15,000. This work needs to be done, but it's not a capital project. It belongs in the Environmental Division operating budget. And we did a similar project a couple of years ago. North Dunes Habitat Restoration, another one, it belongs in the environmental operating budget. Let's see. Police radio, year 3 of 6. It's kind of locked into that contract. Shoreline infrastructure repairs. This is absolutely critical. I will show you in the next slide what we're talking about. It's not another study. This is to actually do the engineering design necessary so that we can award construction contracts to make the critical repairs along the shoreline. So I'll come back to that in a moment.
And for council, you did receive an email from Mrs. Toomey about this today that was sent to you, and then there's a paper copy that Ms. Romero provided. So thank you for the clarification. This is not a study, Bob. This is the engineering documents.
Great. Okay, the next several come from the Sunset Center, except for one anyway. The bollards in front of the ticket office, they keep getting hit. I have a photo of it coming up. $20,000, we would replace the 4 or 5 that are out there and have a couple of spares. The next one was also requested by Sunset Center. If you recall, at the last strategic planning workshop in Carpenter Hall, it was pretty cold. So we have some heater problems in there, so that would be to address that issue. The next project I'm recommending, this is the North Lot electrical panel. We talked about the hiring electrical engineer soon with a contract to look at the panels in several buildings. One of them is at Sunset Center. This is a big ticket item. It's $100,000. It has to happen, or we're going to lose, potentially lose the parking lot lights, the EV chargers, and the hookup to the CERT box. So that's an important project. I would say that's critical. Next one is portico design. There was a trellis over by the ticket office, the south of the ticket office. That's the design or replacement for that. The next one's a retaining wall repairs. The design of the retaining wall repairs, there's 3 walls at Sunset Center that are tilting. So
Where are those?
One's in the north lot right where that electrical box is. One's on the south parking lot. Where's the third one?
It's where the railing is in the north lot as well.
That's right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so that's the retaining wall. And then vehicles. Hopefully we'll get some reimbursement money from 3CE now that they had their presentation last night. There's 2 forestry trucks. One is from 2000, one is 2002. I have a classic photo coming up on those. These would be electric vehicles with hopefully some kind of grant, some reimbursement. And the PD administrative vehicles was 2006. So these are proposed, these critical replacements for much needed replacements for old vehicles that are at the end of their life. Grand total of these 17 projects is let's call it $2.2 million. Okay, we don't have $2.2 million, but we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, shoreline repair. So the coastal engineering firm Integral EMC, and Herrick Hasunich, presented to the Forest and Beach Commission last month. They, if you look at the little table on the bottom, they evaluated our 11 seawalls, our 11 beach access stairs, and our 6 revetments. Revetments are the big rocks that you see in the photo on the right, big areas of rocks. They are saying that 2 to 4 of those seawalls need repairs, with 1 high priority. That's the photo on the left. It's the 4th Avenue outfall structure. We knew that was a problem. It was in this 5-year CIP. We're suggesting that we move it up a year or 2 and get started on the design of that. Beach access stairs, they're saying that 9 need some form of repair, some very minor repairs, some more significant, 3 of which are high priority repairs. And then of the 6 revetments, 4 need repair, 3 of those are high priority. Okay, so I strongly suggest that we allocate the funding to start the design to make these critical repairs.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
During the storms, we lost that access area at 8th.
4th.
No, but we also lost it at 8th where the
Oh, the ramp.
vehicle, yes, the
Yes.
ramp. Does that have to be rebuilt completely? Because it's got a lot of layers when you're out.
I think once the sand comes back, council member,
Yeah.
that it'll be navigable.
Okay, because it looked like it had more than just sand in it. It looked like gravel
Yeah,
and different
yeah.
layers in order to.
I think that's runoff from the parking lot, historic stuff, but we'll take a look. We can ask Rob Culver as well.
Here's some photos. Library Master Plan Project 1, which again, we don't, haven't identified, but here's a photo of the ribbon cutting for the gathering room. So that was a very successful project. What was interesting is the gathering room was open right when COVID hit, so you couldn't gather. But that was timing was a little off, but it's a beautiful room. It came out really nice. So the thought here is to continue on making improvements to either of the 2 libraries. There's a picture of the bollard that's tilted, and then in the north lot of Sunset Center, the electrical panel. If you look closely at the end of that thick red arrow, you can see where the electrical conductors melted. That's a problem. The building official told us that thou shalt fix it. So if we don't want to lose the lighting and the EV chargers, we need to do something there. Forestry vehicle on the left, you can see the door. That's not an illusion. That's the door. This is the vehicle that was used during the storm repair, so that was interesting. Bottom right is the Rule 28 Underground Utility District funding that Javier has been working on. We forwarded you that email from him the other day. Don't need any funding at this time. Last year at this time, we said that would be coming for, I think, $75,000 money to hire a surveying consultant to get this thing launched. Javier can do this. Been talking to PG&E. We're already off to a good start and hope to come before you, council with a white paper and recommendations for an underground district and go from there. Okay, total funding. So we had the $6 million for carryover projects. The 17 new projects, without counting that last one, is $2.1 million. So in red, we have $2.1 million, but we only have estimated $1.6 million available. We need to cut back. Even if we had the $2 million, that's $8 million of projects, 42 projects. That's an overwhelming amount. So that's not catching up. We need some time to catch up, and we need to cut back and just focus on the most critical for next fiscal year. So that's what we're recommending. Okay, different topic. Now we're looking at the 5-year CIP. Believe it or not, we're in the home stretch. Okay, if money was no object, if you in your packet you have the 5-year CIP document that was updated for this year. If you took all the money from the last 2 fiscal years, all the money that's the $2 million that's proposed for next fiscal year, not proposed, potential for next fiscal year, and look at all the identified projects as of today for the 4 years after that, lump them all together, make a big pile of money, that's $30 million. Don't have $30 million, but that's what we've identified as needed repairs. There's 2 things that I believe are important on this graphic though. It's to look at the distribution of funds. Are we putting the funds in the right areas? So for example, on the right-hand side, we have the hard infrastructure. So 55% of our funding would be for streets, for drainage, and facility of the buildings. So 55%. 30% would be for more of the soft infrastructure. That would be the shoreline, climate, forest, and I threw in library there because I didn't know where else to put the library. So that's 30%. And then 15% would be like internal services, which is IT, fleet, and the contingency fund, 15%. My opinion, I've been doing capital projects for much of my 40-year career. I think that's a good mix. But now's the time, if you want to make some adjustment, let's put more to environmental, less to streets. This is kind of giving you the big picture. The other thing that this is showing is that funding-wise, as I'll show in the next slide, we don't have $30 million. In fact, for the next 4 fiscal years after the upcoming fiscal year, so we identified 4 million, 4 million, 2 million, 2.6 million. The anticipated budget in the 5-year forecast is 1 million, 1 million, 1 million, 1 million. So we have less than half of the resources to address the infrastructure. As Chip and Maxine pointed out, the economy, we need to be conservative. Yes, that's true. As a professional engineer, I'm just saying that the infrastructure that's out in the field, as council well knows, will decay with or without funding. So it's a balancing act. How do we address the infrastructure problems and balance it out with the funding we have available? Implementation strategies. We suggest that we continue to use the 3 contract project management consultants. We have Asonio doing facility condition assessment, managing. We have 4-Leaf doing the police building, a couple other projects. We have Wallace Group doing several projects. Suggest they're already on board, they're running, they're doing well. Let's keep going for the most part. We're going to utilize, we already have been utilizing Javier from day one to the maximum possible extent. We'll continue to utilize statement of qualifications to streamline the consultant selection process. We still have to do RFPs where it doesn't work, but that does seem to help. Continue to combine similar projects. So we did a couple of examples of police building phase 1 and phase 2. That doesn't make sense. Boom, lump them together, it's one project. Drainage, phase 1, phase 2, boom, lump them together, one project. So it just helps with the number of projects, it helps with the management. We're not dealing with so many different projects. And then also to continue to have other departments manage their own projects. That's been successful in the past. And most of the lion's share goes to Public Works, but we certainly help facilitate other department projects.
And that one, there's, obviously we wouldn't have the chief do his own electrical work or Brandon do plumbing or fix the retaining wall, even though I'm sure he could. But the digital scanning project is one that Brandon facilitated. Obviously Joel will be working on his on the hardware for his IT upgrades and those kinds of things where it makes sense to have the departments manage a project.
Thank you, Chip. Okay, so recommendations is that one and done, unless you have requests that we return. We're asking council, we're no formal action today, but by nodding to accept the 14 projects that we suggested are completed this year, accept the 3 projects to cancel and defer, and the projects that are anticipated by others, and accept the carryover projects to keep them going pending the budget resolution in June, once we have the final tally, roughly $6 million for that. And we're seeking council direction on to tentatively carry over that funding, the 3 million plus the 6 million, the total of 6 million. Refine the list of the 17 capital projects. I can go back to that slide and we can go over it one by one if you wish. And if you have any comments on the draft CIP, the 5-year CIP update, now would be the time. At the May meeting to come back, I was hoping to really just drill down, focusing on the new projects for next fiscal year, based on what feedback we get today. That's all I had. Was that 40 minutes?
Well done, Bob, well done.
Too long.
So I'm going to break with our usual tradition, and instead of going ahead and asking questions now, I think I'll go out to the public first and see if they have any questions or comments.
If I may, really quickly, Mayor, the bogey between the available funding and the proposed funding is about $532,000. So again, if we sharpen our pencils, or if you direct us to sharpen our pencils, or we remove some projects, we can ideally get some of those projects either deferred even though we're just kicking the can down the road to some extent. Or we can, I don't know what the other solution is, actually.
Parking fund. No.
Yeah, we do have parking funds.
Could we go into our reserves?
We could go into fund balance. Yes.
Okay, so why don't we go out to the public now and see if the public has any questions or comments now before we bring it back. It's more of a workshop format tonight anyway. I think we do well to include the public. So is there anybody in the public wishing to speak to this item? I don't see anybody in the room here present, but is there anybody out in the public who would like to speak? Shirley Moon, and then Byrne. Jeannie. Shirley, welcome.
Hi. I almost don't know what to say after that presentation by Bob. It's quite depressing. And I don't know how the city has gotten in this situation, but from what I've learned on Scenic Pathway, it isn't a good idea to defer maintenance. And it does catch up and cost more in the long run. So the comment that I have is that storm damage repairs should not usurp the ongoing restoration of the Scenic Pathway. Obviously, Scenic Pathway has not received appropriate capital for decades. This valuable asset should not continue to be sacrificed in order to fund some other projects. Improving this asset is not only an investment in our community, as was previously stated, but it is an investment in our tourism, which we are quite addicted to. How many visitors come to Carmel and don't visit the coast? Since tourism is so critical to the city's financial health, it seems to make common sense to restore an asset that draws visitors to Carmel. We invest in our visitors' experience by the beautification of our city and the beautification of the pathway. People talk, people refer to Carmel as maybe the best place that they can go to get away from everything else in their life. We need to make it spectacular. And Carmel Cares is doing everything it can to make that happen for the city. This is an investment in our future. So the Scenic Pathway has, we've been working on it for nearly 3 years. We've asked for financial support, and while $50,000 is nice, it's not really going to cover what is proposed in Bob's budget. And we still don't have a shovel in the dirt over that. The boards are falling down and are just laying there along the pathway. What kind of an impression does that leave? The DG pathway needs refreshing. The trim boards need to be pulled up or replaced. We need the signage, for heaven's sakes, is not a big amount of money. They're cracked, they're falling off, and they're not correct. Irrigation, if we had irrigation fixed, we could put in some decent plants, which will hold the soil in place, which will help with the erosion of the bluffs. It all interfaces. So I don't know what I'm asking for because I'm not able to give you an estimate, but we need some money down there. It is not wasted. It is an investment in our future. And I would start with $100,000. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you for your comments and thank you for your efforts. Dale?
Hi. I missed the first part of the meeting. I was up.
You muted yourself, Mr. Byrne, I think.
Hi. I thought that was an excellent speech that Shirley just gave, and I could never top her eloquence at expressing the opinions she expressed. But we I was just up at Forest Theater planting a cypress tree that a lady up in Carmel Woods was gracious to donate and pay her gardeners. It took 3 hours to dig it up, and I was up there helping Friends of Carmel Forest plant one because the 2 Cal-Am trees are going to be taken out, and then the other smaller tree that's next to it is also going to be taken out, and it's very sad, but we're doing what we can. So Bob and I have negotiated for the last 2 years about the 50,000, and I thought it was a pretty good negotiation for the city and us because there was $50,000 allocated. We did matching funds, which means I had to go out and raise $50,000 from really good people in the community that are willing to give us $5,000, $10,000, $1,000, $50. And we're ready to go on that project. I'm happy to hear that it's going to be happening in May. In the meantime, we're just moving ahead, as I said last night. But I mean, I don't know if it helps you, because we're a pretty good deal. You know, we've given you $250,000 and stuff over the last couple of years, and you gave us about 15,000 so far, and 50 coming. But then I have to match that. So no matter how you look at it, we're giving you like a 5-to-1 return on your money. I don't think you can get that in the bank. Plus 20,000 volunteer hours. You all know the story. So maybe if we say you give us 100,000, I'll go raise 100,000 with Shirley and some of our other leaders. And we could replace all the side rails, border rails on the pathway, replace all the DG. I know people are tripping and falling. We don't hear about what that costs the city because it's kept quiet, but I know people are tripping and falling. We also replaced all the sloped areas that Karen Ferlito knows very well that were extremely dangerous, and we paid for that and did all the contracting ourselves. In terms of I didn't see if the $250,000 was going to be spent on design for the stairways, but we happen to have on our team Tim Mallory, who's built 50 houses in Carmel and also happened to build all the stairways on the beach for Clint Eastwood at the time. It cost $95,000, took 2 months to build. And somehow we're going to spend hundreds of thousands on a design when Tim Mallory could come down there and show you what the design is and how to build them. So I would recommend that Tim was supposed to be here tonight, but he didn't show. But you know, we could certainly help Bob come up with some kind of a plan to replace the wooden stairways, which is probably a good idea. And we're more than willing to help out with that. So I guess I agree with Shirley. You know, you were going to give several $100,000 a few years ago, then you canceled it. And we've basically done all of that for free. And now if you give us 100, we'll match it with another 100 and we'll go replace some of the things that are severe safety problems and also beautification issues. Happy to discuss anything else you want to, but that's our proposal tonight.
Thank you, Dale. I appreciate that. Thank you for your efforts, too. Is there anybody else wishing to speak tonight? Right. Don't see anybody, so I'll close the public comment period, bring it back to council for discussion, questions, comments, direction. I guess, go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. I have a number of questions. Thank you for the presentation, Bob. Come up. First, I'll mix my questions and comments all together so I don't forget anything. You know, Councilmember Richards asked at the beginning of the meeting if we could, at the beginning of the comments a few minutes ago, about funding $2.1 million instead of $1.6 million and taking the $500,000 out of fund balance, and I'm certainly interested in that too. So I would like to see, you know, I think that's one option for us to consider would be just funding, you know, whatever we come up with, whether it's 2.1 or 2.3 or 1.9, and taking the difference out of fund balance. And you know, so I would be inclined for myself to sort of defer that question until we have a better look of what the entire budget is. Another comment, you know, I've talked to Chip about this quite a bit, and I don't understand, and I'm not, you know, no disrespect intended, I'm not sure staff understands really what's going on with the vehicle and equipment fund. And I would really like to see this year, you know, I mentioned this last year too, and I think nothing really happened. But I would really like to see, you know, we're taking money out of the vehicle and equipment fund to fund these 3 vehicles or 4 vehicles and the police radios. And, you know, the way I'm understanding that works is that the depreciation on these, you know, vehicles and the police radios and whatnot should be put into the vehicle and equipment fund as it occurs. So I think the city should get into the habit of maintaining that thing in a more scientific manner, rather than just having it sit there for 3 or 4, certainly as long as I've been on the council, and then pulling money out. So You know, we had this discussion when we talked about the fire engine a couple of months ago, and I'm repeating that here, that I would really like to see that done. Some questions on, most of my questions now are, I'm generally, in terms of the list of projects, I'm generally okay. I'm not sure if we really need to micromanage the list of projects quite yet. But my comments are basically about the 5-year plan, which is on slide number 19. Could you go back a couple slides? This is the pie chart. Yeah. So I have three, you know, you asked for comments on this chart, and so I'm going to give you comments on this chart. $3.555 million is a lot of money for the library. And I went, I know our library is loved, and I appreciate that, and I understand that the library gets a lot of donations, and that's good. So I went to this chart. I think this is the right place. And I looked at the numbers for the library, which is way down at the bottom, and I don't see $3.555 million, $3.6 million on here. So I'm trying to figure out where that number came from, so I can have a better understanding of, you know, how the library fits into the total amount of money that we spend as a city, that comes out of the city budget.
Did you want me to answer that one?
Yes.
So in the left-hand column under the word library, you see the $3,555,000, that's in thousands. So that's the total of the blue line.
Okay.
For prior carryovers, it's 355,000.
Okay. So
if you add all that, and then, I'm sorry, the greens are the donations. So we're estimating 800,000 for the construction of the first, and then 1.2 million. So that's two of the 3 million.
Okay, so two things caused my confusion.
Okay.
First, I was looking at the wrong blue line. You know, I think it's just from my own perspective, this is pretty confusing because the blue line above the library is closer to the word library than the blue line under the library, and there's no spacing. So so that caused me a considerable amount of consternation for next time. And then I would question, you know, I think it's a little bit misleading to have the number $3.6 million up here when $2 million of this is external money. And I appreciate that this money maybe flows through our budget, but that's not the amount of money that you're really asking the council to appropriate. So that's $2 million out of a $30 million capital improvement project budget for 5 years, and that's a significant amount of money. So I would ask that the next time, you know, it would help me that the next time it wasn't $3.555 million, it was $1.555 million.
And we could do the same for streets, for example, because of the other.
That issue runs through the other categories as well, because some of that money is not really ours to spend, and I think it would be better, you know. So Dale and Shirley bring up an interesting point, and the library is also an interesting point in that we should support, you know, we as a council need to figure out how to support organizations that provide these services to us. I definitely think that we should do that, you know, but it's hard, you know. So Karen talks a lot about the Mission Trail Nature Preserve, and we don't get a lot of monetary support from the Mission Trail Nature Preserve. We get physical support for the Mission Trail Nature Preserve in terms of the work that the Wheaties and other people do down there. And so it's a balancing act to try and figure out how much money to allocate to these people, these groups that do this work. And I'm constantly thinking about that, but I would really like the number to be better.
And if I may, real quick, out of the 30 million, 6.3 million is external funds.
Okay.
Those are all the green numbers.
But again, that's a little bit confusing because the percentages, you know, the number changes a little,
yeah.
But some of the percentages change a lot when that happens. So libraries aren't really 11% of our budget; they're really 5% of our budget, 5% of our capital improvement budget. And that's, you asked for comments on the numbers. So vehicles. 3.6. Yeah, and I think my vehicle thing was sort of the same, you know, sort of the same. Let me postpone my comments on the vehicles until after everybody else, so I can figure out if my comments on the vehicles and the streets still make sense.
I would like to make a comment. Not only have the Friends of Mission Trail Nature Preserve put in physical work, they have raised well over $200,000 over the last many years, which has been spent in Mission Trail with various projects, everything from removal of invasives to fire fuel abatement. So it has been not as apparent as Carmel Cares, the money that's raised, but there has been considerable funds raised and spent in Mission Trail. We're just not as good as reporting it.
Bobby, did you have questions or comments?
Well, one, this might be well, the sunset, the EV, you said it could affect the EV stations, the $100,000 for the electrical.
Right, we need to replace the electrical.
Is there any way that we could get some help from, you know, some of these the companies that provide electricity, like, what was it, CC&E or whatever that company is?
Yeah, right.
Can we get some grant money to help us with fixing this, because it will affect the EV charging stations?
Potentially, yes, and when we do, if we do revise that electrical panel and increase the capacity of it, we'll be working with PG&E on the conductor, so increase the capacity to allow for all the west wall of the parking lot to be EV chargers. Then not only will we get free or very low cost EV chargers someday, but also potentially some money from 3CE to upgrade the panel. So yes, we're working with PG&E
to try to get some help with that.
We need the electrical engineer to help us, because there's a lot, it's a little confusing. But yes.
It just seems like a high ticket item that we might be able to get some help on.
Yes, we certainly will try.
Okay, thanks, Bob.
So I'd ask some questions, I guess, unless somebody wants to go first. So Bob, what is the Shirley Moon, who asked the question? Nancy Toomey asked a question about grant funding. What are we doing about grants? I mean, it seems to me that some of this work that's damage done on the beach, for example, that should qualify for FEMA money.
A couple of things. You want to talk about the FEMA, the discussion with FEMA last week, a couple of the SARES?
Yeah, so you are correct, Mayor. We are dealing with FEMA right now and trying to get quotes, estimates on what it's going to cost to repair, say, the beachway stairs, the avenues where the concrete got destroyed. So we're going to put those into them for them to repay us back, but that's a long process.
But it's still money to be had, and I think we need to get in the queue
earlier
than later.
Yeah, we have to outlay it.
So I think we got to get in the queue. So we build papers and that kind of stuff. Is the federal government representatives aware of where we are,
yes,
our needs?
So we have met with FEMA. They came down to Public Works last week. Okay. We had, an hour-long meeting with them?
It was 3.
I think it was productive, about an hour. So we are in the process. We have started everything with them, and we're actually going to have a representative that's going to be coming here hopefully on a weekly basis to help us start inputting all of our receipts.
When Bobby and I were at the National League of Cities the other day, we saw a presentation on a tracking program that really is very effective, a very small investment of money, but really let you know what opportunities were out there in the grant world, and it wasn't just some FEMA grants, it was all sorts of grants that are available. I'd suggest we take a look at that software, and you brought the information back.
I did, Mary. I brought the information back, and I'll share it right away.
I'll make it clear, though, this is not a grant program. This is the emergency dollars that was made.
Well, we're just saying that maybe alongside of that, there may be some grants out there.
Supplemental grant money.
Right. Also, piggybacking off of what the chief said, FEMA's will have professionals come in and evaluate the condition of the stairs beforehand. Those stairs were not in pristine condition, so they'll say, well, the storm damage only caused X percentage of the damage. And the revetments, for example, I don't think we're going to, the revetments, some of them, as our engineer determined, were not designed properly in the first place. Some are, some
Bob,
aren't.
I mean, I realize that that's good news, but maybe you could keep that to yourself and just go out and try to do the best you can for recovering the money, getting the grants.
Okay, so FEMA is one avenue to reimburse us for storm damage. The Coastal Commission is another avenue that we were exploring to pay for our coastal engineering study phase
Coastal
2.
Commission or Coastal Conservancy?
Coastal
Oh,
Conservancy.
Coastal
Yeah, it's gotta
Conservancy,
be
yeah, correct.
conservative.
Yeah, the Coastal Commission's not gonna give you any money. Might take
Well,
some, but.
correct, you're correct.
Yeah. Okay, so then did I hear that you're gonna go ahead and select the contractor for the police station? For the,
We selected an architectural firm.
We're making a recommendation to
I'd
council.
like to see, I think maybe Jeff would agree, maybe that should come before the ad hoc, just so we can get a feel for what's going on.
You could certainly do that.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Right, we just had our first meeting with them today to talk about some disconnects between what we had intended and what was in their proposal. They're the best firm for this project,
Okay,
but some of the things were a little bit of a disconnect, schedule being one of them, for example. So we met today, but now would be a good time to set up a meeting with the ad hoc to kind of, where we're at, why
Yeah,
they
let's
were
stay connected with
selected.
the ad hoc. And then, as far as Dale Burns' offer, the Dale Byrne Challenge matching dollars, I think there's some value in that, frankly. I think Dale's done a good job. I do think that the argument that, or the position that the scenic trail has kind of been overlooked is valid. I mean, it really is. It's a very well-traveled pathway by the visiting public, not only the visiting public, but the locals. We've had to go down there and move sprinkler heads that have been popping up all over the place. And I think the more effort we can get down to rehabilitating that, the better off we'd be. So, I mean, I think if Dale's got a proposal where we put up some money and he'll match it, that's great. Let's go ahead and accept that challenge. And then finally, as far as going to fund balance, I'm not really that excited about looking at it until I know what the whole budget is as a whole. I think Jeff did a pretty good job of bringing that up, but I do think that, if we're gonna enter some sketchy times, and fund balance is where our safety lies, so, kind of our safety net, so I think before I go to saying we're gonna move money out of funds and take from there, I'd like to know what the total balance is in there. So I think that, Jeff, you just said that as a possible. You were saying you're not opposed to it, but I'm not opposed to it either.
I was just echoing what Bobby's comment and saying, I would like to see what that is. And
Yeah, that's what I
make
agree.
this sort of decision
I agree.
when we,
Now
next month.
Now that we have the audit done,
Yeah.
we know what fund balance, you'll know what the fund balance is as well as our reserves.
And
So,
congratulations on the audit. Well done.
thank you, thank you.
That's pretty much my comments at the moment. Alessandra, then Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I agree with you about not going into our fund balance until we really absolutely know and have that as a last reserve option. I have a question about the library. There's a master plan, and then in another section, there's carpeting and interior and exterior painting. Is there any overlap there? And is there any way part of that can be done later? First do the master plan, and then do those kind of things?
The current fiscal year had a number of projects, including the carpeting, the painting, and the generator. Those projects are in design now.
Mm-hmm.
The painting, we believe we can proceed with little to no impact on the master plan. The master plan may be project 1 or 3. Gosh, we have to repaint the room. So be it. We're painting the bulk of the exterior and the interior. Okay, so we think and it's been many years since we painted. That's time well spent. The generator is something that we also need to do with or without the master plan, but they do tie in together. The one that's the sticky point is the carpeting. We don't want to put in new carpet and then tear it
Right,
up also.
exactly.
It's similar to the paint. So we're going to bid it as an ad alternate, possibly award it, and then cut back. Gosh, let's not do these rooms, but let's do the bulk of it. So we're bidding with a lot of flexibility we don't want to put in carpet that's going to be ripped out soon.
Exactly.
But it's coming from different phases. Does that make sense?
It does.
One of the documents that we always share as part of the budget, and we can get you a copy of that immediately, Councilmember Dramoff, is the contractual relationship, for lack of a better word, between the council and the library board, which actually works for you, and it really outlines what the library board will pay through the Carmel Public Library Foundation, which provides the funds to the library board, and then they allocate them and spend them. and what their obligations are, and then what the city's obligations are. And yeah, and some of those are routine maintenance items, such as the paint and carpeting. So, but we'll get you that. It's interesting. It's kind of almost a historic read at this point in time.
Okay, I was just concerned because I don't want them to do this thing and put the carpet down and then have to rip it out and put it back in.
Very,
I actually
very
expressed
smart.
the same concerns when we talked about this last year.
Okay.
I didn't want to duplicate, efforts and have a
Right.
carpet put down and it's soiled during the course of the
Exactly.
construction. Well said. Karen?
Yes, well, I talked to you briefly about this $500,000 contingency fund, and I understand the reasoning behind that, but I also see immediate needs in places like the beach pathway. So to just have $500,000 sitting in the contingency fund and not meet the requests about the pathway, which have been ongoing for years, bothers me a little bit. I do like the idea that you're going to clean up this and put things in the operating budget where they belong for some of those. The $15,000 in the that you have here for invasive removals in Mission Trail, Friends have some money that they would add to that to do the invasive removal of the acacia groves. They would be willing to collaborate with. There is probably about $75,000 worth of tree damage in the preserve, which will rapidly turn into fire fuel over the next few months. And that is a health and safety issue in the city that needs to probably go into the operating or maintenance budget. But we have to think about that because this isn't something we can piecemeal plot by plot over the next few years. This will be fire fuel. So I think health and safety needs to carry the day on that. And I do think that we have such incredible volunteer groups throughout the city that whenever we can, we need to augment what we can do to further their work and appreciate their work. Many times after a rainstorm, I go to to Scenic Pathway, and there are just big, huge puddles all over. I saw a woman trying to push her walker through a puddle one day, and it was disturbing because that's over 30 years of wear on there that just keeps getting pushed back all the time. And Shirley is right. There are broken boards, there are broken barriers, there are the pathway barriers that are trip hazards, there's sprinklers that are trip hazards. We need to take care of that. It is a gem in this community, and we need to put the money, even if we have to go into fund balance, I believe, to do it, because that has been pushed off way too long. So,
If I could just build on what Karen's saying, what I'd like to see is an actual plan, developed pathway to completion of this project. We've been looking at it piecemeal, and I'd rather see a holistic approach to the whole problem down there. Not just saying, okay, we're gonna go ahead and do, the guardrail, and then we'll let it go for a while, and then we'll go back and put the borders in, and we'll put some DG back in there. I'd rather see a whole program developed for how we're gonna do it, what the timeline is for implementation, and what the costs are gonna be, and then we could fund it in its entirety, instead of piecemealing it.
I completely agree with that. And also looking at the irrigation and the water, because that's also another component with the beautification of that area.
Well,
One of the other components I'd like to see is there was a proposal for a handicap outlook there, I think at the bottom of maybe 10th, was it? No, it couldn't be that far. But anyway, Shirley Moon had shown it to me. There was an area where there were going to be an elevated seating area, and then there was a chance to go ahead and right where that handicap access is there. That would be good to incorporate also.
yeah, and that makes perfect sense to treat it as a whole if we can get that done in a shorter period of time, really put some attention to it. And then it's possibly also a fundraising opportunity. Because to me, it doesn't make sense to put in a lot of planting and then turn around and rip out the DG and start over. It's kind of like there should be an order to this as far as what's efficient and what is also the proper way to do it.
I just want to say, it sounds like you have full support. I don't know where Jeff stands, but it sounds like the four of us are in complete agreement with that. So we got to figure that one out.
Jeff, you're good? And you had some additional comments you wanted to come back with, too.
I'm thinking about the time Karen and I tried to do this on the Forest and Beach Commission, like
Years ago.
6 years ago.
Well, now you're in a position to advocate. You can actually decide.
Well, you know, sometimes it comes down to because our shoreline, because our forests, because our parks don't have roofs that leak and basements that flood, they get pushed off and pushed off. And it's not,
Yes.
it's not always benign when we keep pushing it off, and then it,
So what I would propose, I'm sorry if I interrupted you,
no,
Councilmember.
go ahead.
So what I would propose is that we do an R&R, we remove and replace as is. So again, that way we don't have to go through any design permutations or engineering or, no planning.
If I may, one of my issues with that, and, not necessarily an issue with that, is that, that design was done probably, at this point, it was probably 30 years ago.
86.
And so
Almost 40 years ago.
36 years ago. And, my recollection, having looked at those plans, 6 years ago, was that, while the design was pretty much lauded, it wasn't a design that was really maintainable for our community in terms of the amount of maintenance the plants took, the amount of water the plants took, and whatnot. And so, I could see doing a repair and replace on what's left, which would be sort of the irrigation that's left, and the the DG and the path and whatever it is. But Karen and I, when we were on the Forest and Beach Commission 6 or 7 years ago, what's his name?
Scott Hall.
No, his predecessor,
Rob
Mullane, took out some of those wooden barriers and put in that awful cable wire shit. Sorry, my apologies for saying that, which I hate. I just don't think that cable wire stuff belongs in that, architecturally belongs in that path. And so I'm a little wary of the whole just willy-nilly replace what happens to be there, because over the 36 years, some stuff is gone, some stuff has gone right or wrong, and some stuff was put there by Rob Mullane, and needs to be.
I think what Chip's trying to do is avoid going into an extensive study, because the cost of these studies is getting a little outlandish, if you ask me.
Well, I think
$40,000 for a study to go ahead and replace a retaining wall seems like a lot of money to me.
I think that a couple meetings, I think that the issues that the issues of the type that I raise in terms of the things that I know, I think that there are members of the community that are probably aware of some of those issues. And so I'm willing to buy off on the sort of repair and replace thing if you go through this process and figure out, what exactly you should be repairing and replacing. Like, that makes sense.
The things that I had, sir, again, is keeping, here's my draft. Keeping the contour of the pathway itself, not making any new loop-de-loops or straightening it out, replacing the bender board, which is the board that holds in the DG, replacing the DG, the irrigation that hasn't worked for a long time, and then the signage. I think you're exactly right.
The signage is awful.
I think that, actually, Visit Carmel, actually, we facilitated a meeting where Visit Carmel had volunteered to actually pay for the design work. And I think we're still working with them, and Carmel Cares. I'm looking at you. But the thing that didn't work, where we learned the most lessons, is in the plant selection. And so I say we leave the plants out of it, and because we've learned a lot since the initial installation of what grows down there. It's a pretty harsh environment, obviously, but we don't spend a lot of money on plantings at this point in time. Let's fix the infrastructure, if you will, and then we can come back and maybe in partnership with Carmel Cares again, come up with a plant palette, because we do have some work by Scott Hall, who did the original plant plans, and then the revised one since I've been back, so within the last 8 or 9 years as well.
That was the one that Karen and I worked on.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
and I would like to make a comment on this. The hardscape is what we need to repair first.
Yeah. Yeah.
the hardscape. And the softscape and the landscape can come later. And what we have learned over the years is the only place that the landscape, the softscape, will survive is where the curb is painted red and people are not getting out and stepping on it. The original plan had landscaping almost everywhere. Cars pull up, they get out, and they step right on top of plants. So that's why some of them disappeared. We don't want to repeat that. But I think if we think about hardscape first, which would include the barriers and the DG. There are some places where the DG is a little narrow and where plants have grown out, so that could use a little bit of tweaking, but nothing redoing that. But I think your idea to hardscape first and then go back in afterwards. Of course, hardscape should include the sprinklers and or at least sprinklers where we want them to then be put on plants. But you have to realize when you have thousands of people stepping all over everything to watch the sunset, we have to be very judicious about where those plants go. And 4 or 5 places is what Jeff and I were tasked to do, is go down and find 4 or 5 places we could add beautification. And we discovered back then that the hardscape is what really needs the work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense to put in pretty plants and then go into the hardscape.
Yeah.
So I think we're on the right track here.
Yeah, I can get behind that. And again, just like Councilmember Dramoff said, putting plants in and then we're going to meander the path. So again, no redesign, no benches, no soft goods, really just, we call it in Public Works kind of a point and shoot. Again, this is what we're replacing. So hopefully we can get a good estimate for you in the next couple of weeks for remove and replace the DG, the bender board, the irrigation, and the signage.
And I hope you are talking replacing the irrigation, because all of the wires were cut at one time to do the sewer problem, and
we'll
trying to
probably
spend money reattaching everything might be money
we'll probably just
wasted.
get you a price for a whole new irrigation system.
I'd like to make sure we're including Carmel Cares in the cons in this discussion.
100%, but the reason, again, you and I are on the same track, Mayor, we don't want to redesign it. And the redesign is what takes months and in some cases years. So let's stick with what works down there, which is the pathway and in its current format. And and maybe Mr. Byrne can help us with some good people to help bid.
Well,
or give us an
I think
estimate.
Shirley's on the trail on a regular basis. She knows every inch of it, so I'd like to get her involved too. So, good.
Absolutely.
All right. So Jeff, you had some other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple more comments. Thank you for letting me pause there for a minute. So I think most of the comments I had about the chart will be taken care of with the sort of jiggering with respect to taking out the donated money. So I have a couple comments on some other things. I have a comment on the $500,000 overflow as well. Unlike it's a slightly different take than what Karen had. I'm just not comfortable giving staff $500,000 to spend on. I understand that a lot of these projects are old and that a lot of these projects are coming. So you convinced me of that in my conversation that we've been having over the course of the past couple of weeks since the first version of this meeting was canceled. So I'm comfortable with having the money in the budget because I think it is a real expense that we could incur with respect to all of these sort of carried over projects. What I'm not comfortable with is a lack of visibility to the council in terms of the allocation of that money, and I don't really know, like I would like to know, you mentioned the retaining wall, so for example, to use an example that you mentioned, the retaining wall out here, which is, was budgeted at $100,000 and is going to come in at $200,000. And I know that I think we made a budget adjustment for that already.
Yeah.
But if some other project comes up, and has 100% overflow, 100% overage, I would like to know.
You will.
And I don't want it to simply come out of this $500,000 and
sir.
us to find out at the end of the year.
No,
that
you
the
will have to
project
award.
was.
You will have to make the award. just like you did on the retaining wall. So it's not a piggy bank for us to go over. So you're still awarding contracts. But rather than having to tap into fund balance in September.
So you will tell us, okay, so I understand.
Yes,
So
sir.
you will tell us, so when the contract comes in for, let's say, the retaining wall, you will tell us that there was $100,000 in the capital improvement project for this at the beginning of the year, and we had a $500,000 slush fund, and now we're gonna use $100,000 of that slush fund to fund this project, and that's gonna leave $400,000 in the slush fund for the rest of the capital improvement project budget for the fiscal year.
Yeah,
That's what I would like.
Yes,
to
sir.
do. That's
I
what
don't
I'd like to
like the, with respect to, I don't like the slush fund, because again, you'll be awarding it. So it is a contingency fund when bids come in higher. But, and then we'll, you know, I mean, maybe we have to delve into contingency, maybe we don't. At the end of the year, we can roll over whatever balance is left over.
Okay. Thank you for understanding my concerns.
Yes, sir.
My second question is about the $250,000 for the engineering. And this, you know, we have some stairs that seem to work, you know, and I'm not sure what the $250,000 for engineering the stairs is. And then I noticed that one of the things on that item is that 4th Avenue outfall. And so the 4th Avenue outfall is part of this $250,000 in engineering, is that correct?
That is correct, and the revetments as well.
Thank you.
Stairs, revetments, and the wall.
Well, we have plans for the stairs, so I'm assuming that we don't really need to do a lot of engineering with the stairs. Is that a good assumption or a bad assumption?
The wooden staircases?
Uh-huh.
I mean, we did a lot of repairs on them a couple years ago with the hangers and the.
But they're designed to do that during storms.
They're
so-
designed to break away.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, I would suggest that the wood stairs did not hold up well. It's a lot of ongoing maintenance. I would suggest that we enhance their structural integrity so we don't have problems 10 years down the road.
So
if I may, the stone wall or the stone stairs are doing great. So I would suggest that when we redesign, if we re-engineer the wood stairs, we do so with a little bit more structural integrity than what was out there now.
So
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how to, like, you know, those stairs have been around forever, and I hear you when you say that they seem feeble. Like I hear that, but that's like one of the world's harshest environments down there. I mean, we saw what happens, and $250,000 to re-engineer some stairs that have been around for 30 years that seem to my unengineering eye to be okay, and they do what they were designed to do, which is break off when we have 30 mile an hour, 30-foot waves. I'm leery of that now. So, yeah.
Well, so a couple things. So again, and Mr. Swanson just made sure, and the mayor confirmed it. So we talked about the beach pathway. If we remove and replace, that's exempt from a coastal development permit, which is wonderful. And it's the same with the staircases. If we repair them, it's exempt from a coastal development permit versus if we redesign something and build something new.
But I asked you, in the run-up to this meeting, I asked you whether the $250,000 was to repair the staircases or to redesign the staircases. And you told me that it was to redesign the staircases.
And the seawalls and the revetments.
Right. Correct.
Correct. So, but in most of the, you know, again, if the staircases are point and shoots and we can replace the hardware and the railings or what have you, we'll do that versus re-engineering them if they can be repaired. And we'll look for the plans. I mean, I know Mr. Mallory very well. So we'll look for the plans, sir.
Well, I'm sorry to belabor this. What I'm trying to figure out is there's $250,000 allocated to the stairs. Now, I've been told.
Is it just, it's not the stairs, it's repairs.
Okay.
So it'd be the revetments and the seawalls. Bob,
Okay.
can you put up the slide that had the?
Okay, no, it's okay.
Okay.
So it's $250,000 allocated to the stairs and the revetments and the seawalls and the 4th Street outfall. How much of that money is going to go to physically fixing the stairs that are broken? And how much, you know, are the stairs that are broken going to be fixed? You know, you and I had this back and forth about, I'm looking at the 4th Street stairs, which are the ones that everybody on my side of town uses. And, you told me that they were closed because there's a 2 feet gap, but I think that 2 feet gap is designed into that set of stairs. So I'm looking at that picture right there.
Yeah, but not the right side where it's unsupported, so something was probably there in the past. And
No, I think that it was, no, I don't agree with that. Because usually the sand comes up, usually the sand on that side of the beach would cover probably 3 or 4 of those stairs. So that side of the beach has been scoured just like the rest of the beach has. So when I look at that picture, what I see is the staircase that's in very good condition because it's not broken, and that's what it's designed to be. So what I'm trying to figure out is how much of the $250,000 is going to put our staircases back into commission, or are we going to have to suffer through a year of
Design direction, you're giving that direction, like that answer, not necessarily right now, but that's your concern.
I'm interested in that. Yes.
Okay.
And then thank you for that. And then $500,000 for the drainage design. And Bobby, if there's one thing that Bobby says over and over and over and over and over again and over again some more, is that he doesn't like studies. And I fought him on the climate change stuff for seemingly forever. And now I'm looking at $500,000 in, drainage design.
Well, we can't just go lay pipes down. We have to know exactly where.
But
they have to be engineered.
we did a master, right.
Right.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I'm worried that we're gonna do, like we're upfronting all the design, and then the council's gonna lose its nerve, and the design's gonna sit on the shelf for a long time, and then it's going to age, and then we're going to have to redo it all. And I am interested in doing a little bit less design and a little bit of implementation. We have we talk about, the one thing I hear you say is the, is the bypass around the lower area around 8th and 8th and I think it's 8th and Mission. There's a big bypass down there, somewhere down there, there's a big bypass off of Unipero, I think. And I would be interested, in seeing some work, in seeing some of the design get pushed out and some of the work that some of that design is going to be get pulled in, so we can start making a little bit of progress on the things that we have to do, and not just design and design and design and design and design as sort of a good faith effort towards fixing the problem. I know, and I'm disappointed that there's no money in the budget, and I've heard what you say, and I noticed that there's no money in the budget for the drainage for this year. And that's disappointing, but the situation is what it is. But I would like to see some drainage work happen, something, so we can make some progress towards reaching our 20-year goal or whatever it is. We talked about this a lot. We're never going to finish projects if we don't start them. And I would like to see, as a policymaker, I would like to see some start.
I guess we can certainly do that. The intent that it wasn't in for next year is to the catch-up year. We haven't done a whole lot of that design. We did the storm drain master plan. So we spent about $100, and this was a carryover. It was $500 and $100, $600,000, spent $100. We're about to launch we started the design, but we have a long ways to go. Figured all of next year doing design to do all of those repairs. But what we could do is we could scale back on the design. It's not too late, and just focus on, say, that the Junipero bypass of the trunk line.
I think it's
and then go out to bid if we have any of the 500,000.
Yeah, I don't want to. I'm not trying to micromanage which work you do and which work you don't. And I only mentioned the trunk because that's the one that we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
I would just like to see some work done in the ground. Like some of that, I would be even more comfortable if we took that $500,000 and some of the work was in the ground and not on the shelf. Like we made a little bit of progress.
Yeah, we can do that. Again, we can focus.
However you want to satisfy that.
I think you get support from other council members with that, Jeff.
Yeah. So I'm fine. That's what, yeah.
Yeah, we have to make sure that we design pipes to handle a certain size storm. I think about that one property on Crespi where it's an undersized pipe and it overflows. So we want to make sure we get the right size pipe in, but we can do that. We can split it in half and do half design and half implementation.
Could I just, do you have more?
No.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to mention the police station real quick, and this might be something to discuss at our budget meeting next month. But I think once we decide whether we're going to do the remodel or a brand-new building, that we absolutely make it a top priority. And I'm also concerned, though, is that these sort of costs are going to skyrocket. So somehow we need some kind of a contingency plan, because the 3.3 may end up being 5 million or, you know, even more. So what are we going to do if we get into that kind of situation? Because between labor and supplies, I mean, everything has been going up. And so I just want us to be prepared with
That may even make a bigger funding issue for the whole project itself, how we're going to
Right.
fund the whole project.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, and apologies for not, you know, we're sitting here and we're discussing this budget, and our funding is anemic. And we got yesterday we found out that we have a $10 million UAL bill, a $10 million increase in our unfunded actuarial liability. And, you know, we have talked a lot about increasing the revenue sources increasing the revenue sources for the community. And I think it's really time to have that discussion.
Okay.
Where are we, before we come back with another vote on, you know, we had C and D, how far into that?
It's a 20-year measure, ma'am, so we're in year 2. So we have 18 years.
Okay, on that one.
You know, the other ones you've talked about in the past, of course, is
Paid parking.
transit occupancy tax. Ours is 10%, everyone else around us is 12%, but again, effectively, our visitors pay 12% because they pay the HID, right, the Hospitality Improvement District, which is Visit Carmel, for marketing purposes.
What other communities pay HIDs? What other communities have?
I don't
We
know.
had, there was a chart, there was that exact chart in the staff report.
Well, they all pay
when we
into
increased the
When we
HID
funded the
a year
conference
ago.
center with the TID.
Oh, yeah, well, the conference center pays,
The hospitality industry went out, pre-assessed themselves a 30-year bond on it, so that's how they funded it. They went ahead and self-taxed themselves, basically, based on the size of hotels. And they funded
Isn't
the
that a
entire
TOT?
project.
That's a variable
TID.
TOT, isn't it? Not,
it's an assessment.
It's an
It's an
assessment.
assessment, so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's 3% for hotels that touch the conference center, 2% for full service, 1% for, you know, motels basically.
That's on top of the TOT.
It's on top of the TOT.
yeah, but there were other communities, if I remember right, you know, a year ago when we had this discussion about raising the HID, because we had to do that for
Visit
the
Carmel.
hotel community, for the community, we had to, like, the council had to take that action. to
Correct,
do
that was
thing.
in 2020, and you're gonna review the Carmel Restaurant Improvement District at your May meeting.
And in those materials, there was a chart
Okay, I'll try to dig that up.
about, not in Monterey, there was a whole survey of other tourist serving communities and what they did. And I remember that 2% like put us like right where everybody else was.
With the two, yeah, it was, it is,
Yeah.
well, it is, it's with the 2% for Visit Carmel, we're right in the middle of everyone else. And again, everybody else pays into the MCCVB, which is a percentage, a dollar, what's a couple of bucks per room night, but of course, you just approved an amendment to that, where it will be, remind me, Mayor, will be a percentage?
I don't think they're going.
No, it's right, right, because Pebble Beach did not want a percentage, so it's just increasing the dollar amount per night. But yes, but you're exactly right, sir, we need to look at potential new revenue sources.
So just if I could continue under the concept of revenue sources, you know, we've had this discussion about the parking and lieu money. I mean, I would argue that if you take a look at this sketch right, or this picture right here, that this wall is about to fall into the parking lot. Could we go ahead and say
Yeah.
that that's preserving the parking area? And I'd like to have our council come back creatively looking at this instead of just knee-jerking no. Because I think that there's an argument to be said that for this and some of the other walls around, that if it's impacting the parking in those areas, you could use parking in lieu money for that purpose, because it's preserving the parking. So I'd like to hear council come back with a
Well,
positive.
you could certainly say that about the north lot.
Yep, exactly.
Electrical panel.
Exactly.
But also, wouldn't it pertain a little bit to the scenic pathway, because that's parking along that street?
Well, I don't know if it's quite as same as this. That's reaching a little bit. This is definitely, there's an argument to be made for parking impact if that wall collapsed. So I think we can, there's a ton of money sitting out there.
How much is that max, like $900,000?
It's 800,000, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say use it.
So I'd say let's try to get our hands on that and use it for the things that we want to do.
If we could use some of that for some of these major projects, that would free up a few $100,000.
So let me just go back to the work that was before us tonight. So we've gone ahead and we've looked at the projects where they're completed in years 2022 and 23. We concurred on that. Project to be canceled or deferred, we gave direction on that. And the carryover project, pending budget resolution. I think we're pretty clear on what we wanted back.
Yeah,
Is there any other questions?
that's good work, good lifting, council.
The Dale, the ask, that $100,000 match.
We'll bring that in as well when we get a price for the improvements that I discussed earlier to the beach pathway.
Yeah.
And then we're keeping our powder dry on fund balance until you
Yep.
review the whole budget.
Exactly.
I have one other question. I'm very happy you're going to move some of those, as I said before, into the operating budget. But we have, somebody did a count of the empty tree squares downtown that have been, some of them paved over and so on and so forth. And where does that fit into the budget? Replanting the empty ones, replacing the ones that blew over in the storms. Where do we,
Yes, that'd be that would be in the operating budget for tree replacement, and we could also use if you approve this budget, you'll have $50,000 for beautification, so we could use funds from that line item as well, council member.
okay, and then I'm not quite sure I understand, and maybe you can find out and enlighten us. What kind of damages from the storms it could be funds from storm damage from the FEMA funds?
Yeah, and that's going to be, it's a little bit of a black box right now. We don't know what the federal government's going to honor and what they're not. So what the chief and Bob are going to do is throw everything in there and try to get as much money back as possible. They've already tipped their hand a little bit. For example, if someone is working on straight time, so if you have a police officer or public works during a storm and they're working straight time, that won't be reimbursable, but overtime potentially would be. So, and again, you read in the news every day where someone has scammed COVID funds or pandemic funds. So necessarily, I think that the federal government's being very rigorous at their review process. But please rest assured that we're going to put everything we possibly can in there without being dishonest, obviously.
All right, I have two other concerns that have come up. One is, I heard a rumor that the EOC didn't have telephone service because the telephone service was not landline anymore. Is that true, or was that a rumor?
Since we're in partners with the city of Monterey, they have, since our relationship began in 2012, they've been acting as our EOC. As part of numerous renditions of the police department remodel, we talked about the community room acting as the EOC. We did rule out the use of a mobile EOC upon Councilmember Richards' request, and then I think it was one of the chiefs
Chip,
wrote a white paper.
I just want to know, did the phones work during the first
I don't
storms
know,
or
ma'am.
not?
I'll check on that for you.
Okay, and then
Certainly,
the
the phones in
second thing,
dispatch work.
I have heard that the youth center doesn't have any heat, and we offered that as a warming and charging area, and people got there and it was really, really cold, and there's something wrong with their furnace, that they were paying $500 a month to raise the temperature 3 degrees.
Or worse yet, the youth center may be closed down.
Well, temporarily. But what is our responsibility for that building? We own the building?
No, ma'am.
No.
We own the land.
Okay.
We own the land underneath the building, so we don't have any, we work in partnership with them, but we don't have any responsibility as we would with, for example, Sunset
But if
Center.
we're offering that as a warming station and they get there and there's no warmth,
It's dry.
I think that's a problem.
I would point out that these things are called out in the climate plans.
Yeah, so I
as
think
line
there is
items.
some
Right.
reason for us to find out what a new heater might involve there. Because that is a health and safety issue during storms if we're offering that as a warming
We'll
station.
just call it a lighting station from now on.
All right,
No,
I think
I-
our work is done for the evening, so we will stand adjourned. Thank you all. Some of you will be back tomorrow night here, I believe. Yeah, my sympathy. Yeah. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Hold on.
That's only gonna be a temporary thing. They're gonna get rid of it.
But still.